Eno lost her father when she was 12 years old. He died in a ghastly car accident on his way to Abeokuta for work. Her mother was just a primary school teacher, but she did her best to raise her children. By the time Eno was 24, she had finished school and was working as a receptionist at a small hotel in town. Life was still hard, but at least she could now support her mother and younger siblings. That was when Biola came into her life. Biola was everything any woman would pray for. He wasn't like the other men she had met before. He was gentle and respectful and spoke with a certain calmness that made her feel safe. They exchanged numbers, started talking, and within weeks, Biola became a constant in her life. He would bring her food at work, surprise her with small gifts, and even help pay for her siblings' school fees. Everyone around her admired him. Even her mother said she liked him. Not long after Eno started dating Biola, she started having dreams about her dead father. She would find herself standing alone in a dark room with only a single light in the corner. And then from the darkness, her late father would appear. He wouldn't say a word. He would just stand there, staring at her, with tears coming out from his eyes. His face looked the same as she remembered, except now it looked sad. He would just utter a soundless word, like he was trying to tell her something. At first, Eno brushed it off. It had been so many years since her father died, and she had never dreamt of him before. So why now? She convinced herself it was stress, or perhaps her mind playing tricks on her. But the dreams continued. Sometimes her father would stretch his hand and try to reach out to her, but before his hand would touch hers, she would wake up. Eno never told anyone about her dreams, not even her mother, not her siblings. She was too afraid of sounding foolish. Besides, what would she say? That her father's ghost was visiting her in her sleep? Still, a part of her couldn't shake the feeling that those dreams meant something. But what exactly did they mean? 8 months after Eno and Biola started dating, Biola popped the big question. Eno accepted and was over the moon. Her family was happy for her. The wedding was everything Eno had dreamed of since she was a little girl. The white satin gown, the smell of fresh flowers, the music, the laughter, family, friends, neighbors, everyone was there. The church was packed, and at the altar, Biola looked every bit the perfect man, handsome in his navy blue suit, smiling proudly as Eno made her way down the aisle. But as the priest began the ceremony and got to the part, if anyone here has any reason why these two should not be joined together in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace. Something strange happened. Eno turned her head to glance at the guests seated behind her. It was a habit. Really, people always did that in movies, and she wanted to see if anyone would actually object. Then a tall, broad-shouldered man seated at the far end of the church slowly rose to his feet. There was something almost unnatural about the way he stood, as though time slowed down. As he lifted his head, Eno's heart nearly stopped. It was her father, the same face from the dreams, the same sorrowful eyes, the same sad expression. He was looking straight at her. Her throat went dry. She looked around, searching the faces of the guests, trying to see if anybody was seeing him too. But apparently, nobody else seemed to notice him. Everyone was smiling with their eyes fixed on the altar. Even her husband-to-be, Biola, stood there with a smile on his face, looking very happy. Eno looked back at her father's figure. He was still standing there, only this time he was pointing directly at Biola. She wanted to ask if anyone else could see him, but the words wouldn't come out. She held her hands together, trying to convince herself it was the stress of the wedding, the exhaustion. Weddings could be overwhelming, right? Maybe she hadn't eaten enough. Maybe she was just seeing things. She turned around again to look at her father, but he was gone. In a blink of an eye, the figure had vanished. The priest cleared his throat, signaling for the vows to continue. Eno was still shaking, but she managed to repeat the words. Her voice was barely above a whisper, and her mind was a mess of confusion. The rest of the ceremony went by like a blur. Later that evening at the reception hall, the music was loud. People were dancing and laughter filled the air. Eno sat at the bridal table, watching as Bola joked and laughed with a few of his friends near the corner of the hall. She was waiting for him to finish so they could take their leave together as husband and wife. Then suddenly the noise around her seemed to fade. She felt a hand tap her gently on the shoulder. She turned around and there he was again, her father, standing right beside her, clear as day. His face was sorrowful, his eyes filled with unshed tears. But this time he didn't just point at Bola, he motioned for her to follow him. Eno's heart pounded loudly in her chest. She looked around again. No one seemed to notice him. Everyone else was busy in the celebration, lost in their own conversations and excitement. Without knowing why, she stood up and followed. Her father's ghost moved ahead, leading her through the crowd, past the dancing guests, out of the large reception hall and into the cool night air. The sounds of music and laughter faded behind her. He stopped a short distance from the entrance and pointed again, this time toward Bola, who was standing a few feet away, still talking with his friends, unaware of Eno's presence. Eno felt the hairs on her arms rise. Her mind was racing now. This was no longer a dream. This was no longer stress. This was no coincidence. This was happening to her in real life. Her father's figure turned to her. His lips moved silently, as though speaking words she could not hear. Eno stood there in the middle of the room, confused, her heart pounding loudly in her chest. She turned quickly to look at her father's ghost again, but just like before, he was gone. 1 week had passed since the wedding. Bola and Eno had planned a trip to Ghana for their honeymoon, something simple, just the two of them, away from all the noise and stress of the wedding. Eno tried to push the strange events out of her mind. She convinced herself that maybe, now that they were married, everything would settle. And it did, for a while. Her father's ghost didn't appear again, and the dreams stopped. A whole week went by without an incident. Life seemed normal. Then on the day they were to travel, Eno was in her bedroom, packing her things. She folded her dresses neatly, placed her slippers and makeup pouch carefully inside the suitcase, and hummed softly to herself as she tried to focus on the trip ahead. But soon she felt as though someone else was in the room with her. She stopped, glanced around the room, and saw her father standing by the door. He didn't speak, but his face still looked sorrowful. He raised his hand and gestured for her to follow him. Eno's heart skipped a beat. She swallowed. A part of her wanted to shout, to refuse, but something else made her rise to her feet and follow. He led the way out of the room, down the narrow hallway and into the guest room they barely used. Her father pointed at a large suitcase resting against the wall. Eno stood there for a moment, her fingers trembling as she reached out and unzipped it. Inside were neatly folded female clothes, nothing she recognized, elegant dresses, a silk scarf, a pair of sandals, and a small purse. At first, she thought maybe it belonged to a relative, but then she remembered that Bola was an orphan and had no relatives. That was what he told her. She also found a few pictures. In the pictures was Bola, smiling and holding a young beautiful woman closely in his arms. In some, they were seated at a beach, in others at a small party, laughing together like old lovers. They looked happy, comfortable and intimate. Eno's hands shook as she went through them. Who was this woman? Why were her clothes in their house? She thought about going to ask Bola about the pictures, but instead she picked up one of the pictures and quietly slipped it into her handbag. She needed answers, and she knew there was only one person she could trust to help her make sense of this. Eno hurried out of the room, making sure not to disturb anything else. Bola had gone out to see some of his friends, so this was a perfect time to see her mother. She grabbed her handbag and left the house. She sat across from her mother in the small sitting room she grew up in and told her mother everything. Her mother listened quietly as she spoke, from the first dream about her late father to seeing him at the wedding, at the reception, and now the suitcase in the guest room with the clothes and pictures. When Eno finished speaking, the room fell into a thick, uneasy silence. Her mother shook her head in confusion and said, "Why didn't you tell me about this earlier?" "I thought I was just seeing things, Mama. I didn't think it meant anything until now." "I don't understand this at all," her mother said. "I've never heard of a dead man's spirit appearing like this, unless he's trying to warn you of something serious." Eno swallowed hard. Should I ask Bola about the pictures? Should I confront him directly? Her mother thought for a moment and said, "Since he didn't tell you anything about his past from the beginning, I suggest you leave it for now. Don't let him suspect you went through his things. Return the picture where you found it. Let it not be like you were snooping around. Men don't like that at all." Eno frowned, uneasy with the idea. "But Mama, what if it's something bad?" I understand your fear, my daughter," her mother said. "But sometimes it's better to be patient and wise. If you confront him now, he might deny it, or worse, turn it against you. You can look for other ways to ask him about his past. In casual talks, stories about childhood, let him feel comfortable enough to tell you himself. I'm sure it's nothing to worry about. Maybe the lady is someone from his past, an old lover, or maybe a late sister or cousin he hasn't spoken about." Eno wasn't convinced, but she trusted her mother's wisdom. "And about your father," her mother added, her voice growing very heavy. "If his spirit keeps appearing to you like this, then it means this is not ordinary. We must pray, Eno, and keep your eyes open. Not everything we see in this world is what it seems." Eno nodded silently. She looked down at the picture in her hand one more time, the smiling faces of Bola and the mysterious woman staring back at her. She knew she could return the picture, but could she pretend and act like nothing happened? From that moment on, Eno watched Bola closely. Every word he said, every action he took, every story he told her, because something inside her, something she couldn't explain, told her that her father's ghost would not appear for nothing. Months had passed since the wedding and life seemed to settle back into normal. The ghostly visions of her father had stopped, and Eno slowly convinced herself that it had all been stress after all. The wedding pressure, the newness of marriage, the uncertainty of the future. Bola too had seemed different, calmer, more affectionate. Eno brought up the picture, and to her surprise, Bola didn't get defensive or angry. Instead, he told her everything. The lady in the picture was someone he intended to marry, but it didn't work out. It was the weekend. Eno and Bola had gone out to a small restaurant for dinner. The place was quiet with just a few other customers around. Eno was laughing at something Bola had just said when she noticed a middle-aged woman walk past their table. The woman paused. Her eyes landed on Bola. Both the woman and Bola froze. Eno watched as the woman's face changed to shock. Her lips parted slightly, and for a moment it looked like she wanted to speak, but she didn't. Bola's expression had also hardened. His smile vanished. His hands tightened around the glass he was holding. Eno was confused. She looked at the two of them. "Do you two know each other?" she asked. The woman gave Biola one last look. She looked like she was afraid, then angry, and without a word, she hurriedly turned and left the restaurant. Biola sat stiffly as he looked at the spot where the woman had disappeared from. "Biola, who was that? Do you know her?" Eno asked. For a moment he said nothing. Then he forced a tight smile and shook his head. "No, I don't. It must be a mistake." A few minutes later, Biola excused himself. Eno sat still for a moment, pretending to scroll through her phone while stealing glances toward the entrance. When she felt sure enough, she quietly slipped out and followed him. She looked around, then caught a glimpse of Biola standing across the road. He was with the same woman. From where Eno stood behind a parked car, she couldn't hear what they were saying, but their body language spoke volumes. The woman looked terrified as she crossed her arms tightly over her chest. Biola was standing too close to the woman. Whatever he was saying wasn't a request, it was a warning. And then he turned. Quickly, Eno hid behind the car and went back into the restaurant, pretending not to have seen anything. A week later, Eno went to the supermarket to pick up a few groceries. She was in the spice aisle reaching for a packet of curry powder when someone brushed past her. She turned and noticed the same woman they had met at the restaurant. The woman recognized her instantly and froze. Eno could see her body tense, and she looked around, probably searching for Biola. Without thinking, Eno stepped closer. "Please, I don't mean any harm. My name is Eno. I am Biola's wife." At the mention of Biola's name, the woman stiffened even more. Her face drained of color, and she gripped the handle of her basket like it was the only thing keeping her steady. "Please," Eno pleaded. "I don't know what's going on, but I need to understand. Who are you? How do you know Biola? Why was he threatening you?" The woman opened her mouth, then closed it again. She looked around the supermarket nervously, as if she was expecting Biola to jump out from behind one of the shelves. Then she moved closer to Eno and said, "I can't talk now. It's not safe." She turned around and left. A few moments later, she came back and handed Eno a piece of paper which read, "The building beside St. Dominic Church, 3 days from now, 12 p.m. Whatever this woman had to say, it was something serious, and maybe it was something that would finally explain why her father's ghost had appeared in the first place. Since the day Biola saw that woman at the restaurant, everything about him changed. His mood shifted from warm to furious in seconds, like he was battling with two personalities. He became anxious about everything, always asking Eno, "Who were you talking to just now? Where did you go this afternoon? Why didn't you tell me you were leaving the house?" It didn't matter how innocent the conversation or the errand was. Biola would accuse her of hiding things and of being untrustworthy. So meeting that woman would answer some of her questions. The day finally came. The woman introduced herself as Abike. She used to work at the orphanage where Biola stayed. She gave Eno chilling details about Biola and warned her that her life was in danger. As a child, Biola had watched his father beat his mother to death in front of him. His father was arrested and sentenced, and Biola was put in an orphanage. On 3 occasions, families adopted him, but each time they returned him to the orphanage because of his uncontrollable anger and violent outbursts. And then he beat up another girl in the orphanage so badly she stayed in the hospital for days. The director of the orphanage punished him. This did not sit well with Biola. In anger, one night, while everyone was sleeping, he set the orphanage on fire and vanished. The building burnt to the ground. Some children and staff escaped, others didn't. The revelation shook Eno to the core. She didn't know how she was going to face Biola when she got home, but one thing was clear. This man is not who he claimed to be. and now her life depended on what she did next. Biola was in the living room watching TV. The moment he saw her, his eyes narrowed slightly. "Where have you been? I've been calling you." Eno smiled weakly, praying her trembling hands didn't betray her. "I stopped by the market. My phone battery died." Biola said nothing for a moment. He just stared at her, the kind of look that made her chest beat hard. Then he smiled and said, "Next time, call me." "I was worried." "I will," she answered. That night, Biola was unusually quiet. He barely spoke during dinner. Eno ate in silence, forcing every bite down. She replayed everything Abike had told her about the orphanage, about his temper and tantrums, the fire, and now she understood what her father's ghost had been trying to protect her from. She cursed herself for not listening sooner. As she cleared the plates, Biola suddenly spoke. "Eno, you love me, don't you?" The question caught her off guard. She turned slowly. "Of course I love you, Biola. Why do you ask?" Biola gave her a small smile. "I just need to know you're loyal, that you will never betray me." Eno's heart quickened again. "I'm your wife, Biola. I'm with you all the way," she lied. "Good, because I've made mistakes in my past, but you are the only good thing in my life now." Eno forced a smile, praying her facial expression doesn't give her away. She was in the kitchen, tidying up after dinner. She had left her phone on the dining table and didn't realize it was vibrating. She had received a message notification. A voice note from Abike. Abiola picked up the phone and played the message. "Eno, some people carry demons so deep that no amount of love can chase them away. Biola's demons never left. They only learned to hide. Please be careful. Your life is in danger." The sound of a loud crash came from the living room. Eno, startled, dropped the rag in her hand and ran out to see what was happening. The sight before her froze her blood. The television lay face down on the floor, with its screen shattered. Their wedding pictures, the ones carefully mounted on the wall, had been ripped down and flung across the room. Its glass was shattered on the tiled floor. Biola stood in the middle of the chaos, holding her phone tightly, still replaying the voice note. His face was twisted with anger. Eno had never seen him like that before. His breathing was fast as his chest moved up and down. Eno stood frozen, too terrified to speak. In panic, she stammered, "Biola, it's not what you think. I can explain. You lied to me. You said you loved me, but you went to consult with my enemy." Biola shouted. "Biola, please. You need help," Eno pleaded. But the man before her was no longer the Biola she knew. The sweet, loving, kind husband was gone. What stood before her was a stranger. Biola moved to reach for her. She turned and made a desperate attempt to run for her life, but she was too late. He caught her by the arm and with a force that knocked the air from her lungs, flung her across the living room. Her head struck the floor hard. The world around her dimmed, the angry shouts fading, and then there was darkness. When Eno finally opened her eyes, she was in a hospital bed. The steady beeping of her heart monitor filled her ears. Her entire body felt sore. Her mother was in the room too, looking very worried, but grateful her daughter was alive. "Thank God you're alive." "Mama, where is Biola?" Eno asked. Her mother took a deep breath. "He set the house on fire, Eno. The neighbor, Mr. Adamu, saw thick smoke coming out from your kitchen. He forced the door open and raised an alarm. They found you unconscious in the living room. The fire was already spreading from the kitchen." She paused and wiped her tears. The fire service arrived just in time. They managed to kill the fire before it reached the living room where you were lying. But Bola was gone. He disappeared before anyone could catch him. Eno's heart dropped. Bola had done it again. He had set the house on fire and left her there to die. She recalled Abike's words and her warnings, and thanked God that she had made it out alive. After Eno was discharged from the hospital, she made the decision to never return to the house again. The police took down Eno and Abike's statements. Bola was never found. Abike moved on and prayed every day for the authorities to catch him, for her peace of mind, and for the safety of other young women out there who may fall victim to his charm. Moral lesson. Eno's father's ghost tried several times to warn her. Sometimes signs and warnings come in strange forms, in form of dreams, in form of feelings, in form of people's behavior, and ignoring them can be dangerous. No matter how long you bury a terrible secret, it will eventually find its way to light. If you have enjoyed this story, then share it with others so that they can listen to it too. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section.